Hello folks, my name is Matthew Peterson, a trainer here at Pragmatic. And as you saw in our intro video, we do everything from on-demand learning to hackathons, boot camps, virtual mentoring, and we have this YouTube channel here. So if this is your first time, make sure you subscribe, and if you enjoy the video, make sure you like. So this is episode number 2 of my series, Building an App through Microsoft Teams. So this whole series is going to be building a check-in application from beginning to end. If you didn't see episode 1, take a look at the link below. The first video is all about getting the application set up, your tables created, the data types using Dataverse within Teams, and walked you through that whole setup scenario. But if you already watched episode 1 and you're ready to continue building, you're in the right spot. And what we're going to do is we're going to start to build out our first screen on the application. We're going to talk about variables, some conditional logic, and bringing the data into the application, start to view that data. So hopefully you are excited to continue to build with me. And without any further ado, let's get to building. So as you can see here, I'm in my Microsoft Teams desktop application. I've already gone to my Power Apps section. But again, if you don't have this tile here, the way to get your Power Apps tile in Teams is if you hit your ellipses, you can search for Power Apps just like so. There it is, Power Apps, and then you can just put it on. And what I've always done is I've pinned it to the actual navigation bar on the left-hand side, so I don't have to do that every time. All right, so here's what we're ready to do. Once you get back into Power Apps, if you watched episode 1 with me, I'm going to come up here to my Build section within Power Apps, which will then pull up any team that I currently have Power Apps installed or an instance of Dataverse installed into that team. And for mine, for my team channel, I did a YouTube app and team series. And as you can see here, this is a few of the objects, the first few that they show me. Now, if I want to go and see all of my objects within this team, I click on See All. And now I'm going to be taken to the entire solution within this team. And what I'm ready to do is I've already got my 3 different tables. Again, these were created in episode number 1. And I'm ready to go into my student check-in application. So once I click on it here, we'll now be taken into the design studio for building out our application. And that's what's a little bit different with your Teams apps is you build it directly within Teams and you don't build it over at make.powerapps.com. So if you've ever built an app in the make.powerapps design studio, you're going to see that right here within Teams. It's going to look very familiar. Not 100% parity between the two, but very, very close to it. So the first thing that I want to do is I'm going to come over here to my tree view. Now the tree view is going to let you know everything that you currently have on your application screen. And so right now all I have right here is screen number 1. So I always like to rename my things. I know I'm going to have a few different screens in this application. So I'm going to double click on screen 1 and I'm going to change this to SCR main. Again, that's not a requirement, but it helps me keep track of all of my different controls. Now the next thing I want to do with this application here, I'm going to zoom in a little bit, is I would like to change the colorings of the different backgrounds and my labels, etc. But I don't want to use their just generic background colors. Again, I could pick a theme here if I want to and get different default colors for these themes. But what I want to do is I have preset colors that I use for my school. And again, if you didn't watch episode 1, this is going to be a check-in application for students. This is one I made for a school that I used to work at, and I want to use their school colors. But I don't want to have to type in the color values every single time because they're not in that standard default list there. So this is where I'm going to use what's called a global variable. A global variable is you define a variable name and then you store code within that. And then you can call upon that variable name at any point on any screen in your application, and then it just brings over that code. So to save time and be efficient, that's what I'm going to do here. So where we go to declare this global variable is I'm going to come over here into my tree view and click on the app control. So I've got the app control selected. Now, whenever you have controls selected, you have different properties that you can manipulate. And that's all going to come up here from what is referred to as our property drop-down window. So this is the property drop-down window. Any property you want to manipulate by writing a formula, you go up here to find that property. And the property that I want to manipulate here is not the start screen, but instead it is the onStart property, which means whatever we put here is going to get executed anytime somebody starts up the application. So I'm going to choose the start screen, the onStart property here. And then where we write formulas is always going to be done here. Well, not always. This is one place where you can write your formulas in your formula bar. So I'm going to already have this formula saved, so I'm just going to paste it on in. And then I'm going to tell you what this formula means, and then you can write this formula as well on your side. So what I have here are 3 different set commands. Now what the set command does is it's going to declare a global variable. So I start off with set, and then I give it a name. So for this first one, I'm calling it var primary. Then after we give it a name, and I always prefix my variables with var because it's easy to call upon them, but var is definitely not a requirement. But then after I give it a name, I come on over here and I put in what is the RGBA code, red, green, blue, and then A stands for how much of the color do you want. So 1 means bring me back 100% of the color. And then I have a semicolon, and the semicolon is here so that I can then run another function. So I do this 3 separate times, and the only difference between these formulas is down here at the bottom, I use a hex value. So if you're going to use a hex value, instead of using RGBA, we use color value, and then we wrap that hex code in double quotes. Now, the other thing that you'll see here is I've commented within the formula. So when you put 2 forward slashes, it allows you to write comments of your formulas. Typically, I wouldn't write my comments for main color, accent color, background color, but wanted to show you, if you're new to Power Apps, how you can write in your own comments. And these, again, don't get run with the formulas. They are just crib notes for you and every time you go back and look at your formula. So I have my 3 different colors here. Now I want to utilize one of those formulas. So I want to take the background color for the screen. So I'm going to come over here and click on SCR main. Now once I have SCR main selected, I'm going to take the original fill color, which is white, and I'm going to set it to my variable background. So I'm going to go var. Now notice, this is the IntelliSense kicking in for those of you new to formulas. As you start to write a formula, it's going to start to filter down the formulas that are available. So by putting that prefix var in, these are all the var formulas right here. And if I want var background, I'm not just going to type it in, because let me show you what happens here. Let's say I type it in like this, var background. Well, I'm going to get red because within the Power Apps FX language, it is always case sensitive. So because it's case sensitive, I never just type it in because 1, just takes too long, and 2, you're just begging for typos. If the casing doesn't match, the formula will not get executed. So I'm going to give you my 2 ways of how I typically write my formulas within Power Apps. One of those is as I start to type in what I want, for example, var background, the minute I see what I want, I click what I want, and I go var background. So that's one way to do it. But you might say, Matt, I'm not a mouse person. I like to keep my hands on the keyboard. I'm right there with you. I am the exact same way. So if I start typing var, if I hit the tab key on my keyboard, it's going to take the very first thing located underneath the formula bar. So if I put in var accent, now we have var accent. So you might be saying, Matt, I don't see any colors changing on your screen. That's okay. We're going to fix that in a second. But let me give you the last way to type in your formulas. So as I type in var, let's say I want my var background. I want to keep my hands on the keyboard. I can use my up and down arrow keys, and then whatever is highlighted in gray, when I hit tab, that will promote that formula to the window bar. So as you watch these videos with me, you're like, how is he getting those formulas in so quickly? It's because I'm using that tab key. Now the reason I'm not seeing a color here, I'm not getting a formula error, but if we remember, all of our variables were put on the onStart property, which means these formulas do not get executed until we start the application. Well, we've already started the application. We're in the design studio. So I have 2 options. Option 1, I hit save, close it, and then reopen it in the design studio. And then that onStart property gets initiated. That takes too long, so I'm not going to do it that way. Luckily, the Power App developers at Microsoft gave us an ability while in the design studio, we can manually run that onStart property without having to close out. So where you do that is located in the tree view once again, and next to app, I'm going to hit the ellipses here, and then I'm going to choose to run on start. Now when I do that, notice my screen has now changed because I am using var background, which is a shade of gray here. Now, just to show you my other colors, and again, you do not have to use these by any means, my var accent is that green color. We were the James Weldon Johnson Trojans, so we were green and black. And then my other color for var primary is this one right here. So 2 different shades of green. But I'm going to switch this back on over to var background. Now I've made some changes. So anytime when you're in the application you make a change, if you hit Control S, it will save, or you can just hit the save button in the upper right hand corner. So now that we know what variables are, and we'll use some other use cases of variables throughout our series here, the next thing we want to do is we want to just start designing our screen. I want to put a nice little header label up here at the top to let the users know what this application is all about. So to do that, we could just go with a generic text label, but I'm going to go a more official design route. I'm going to put in a rectangle here. And the reason that I'm going to use a rectangle is this rectangle will be a nice little landing area to put multiple objects on. So it's not just a text label, but I can put images, I can put icons, and then the rectangle is just that kind of almost like a landing area for our different controls. So that's how I'm going to do it in this application. So to do that, I'm going to come on over here to the left-hand navigation panel, and I'm going to go to the Insert section. And once in the Insert section, what I want to put in here is a rectangle. So I'm going to choose Rectangle. As we can see, the rectangle is now on the screen. And my best practice is after I'm done inserting a control, and that's what these are referred to, anything you add to an app as a control, I always go to the tree view and I relabel these controls so they're easy to identify. So I'm going to double click here and call this RCT header. Now that I've renamed it, I'm going to take this header and just start to do a quick little design here. So I'm going to have it stretch out all the way across. And then now that it's been stretched out to the ends here, I'm going to change that color of the rectangle. So with my rectangle selected, I'm going to go back to my property dropdown and I'm going to go to its fill color. And instead of this RGBA of that default purplish blue, I'm going to call upon one of my variables and I'm going to go with var primary. And so now I've got that nice little green rectangle on here. The next thing that I want to do is, now that I have the rectangle, I want to insert some text on this rectangle. So I could go to the Insert section. This is one place where you can always put your objects in, but you also have an Insert drop-down as well. Same exact thing, it's just wherever you get the most comfortable, or wherever, really for me, it's whatever my mouse is closest to. So what I want to do next is from the Insert ribbon or that Insert section, I'm going to put in a label. Now we can see the label on the screen, but again, the minute I put something in, I like to go to the tree view and relabel. So I'm going to call this label LBL header. So I have LBL header, and now I'm just going to have that take up the whole rectangle itself and have it stretch across. Now to change the text of this label, I can do it in a few locations. I can select it in here and go to the formula window, or over here in the properties panel, there's a text box where I can change it right over here. So I've already written one formula. Let's come on over here to the text. So I'm going to come over here and I'm going to re-text this, so to speak, the JWJ student check in and out. And the minute I put that in and I click away over here, you can see that there it is, JWJ student check in and out. Really hard to see, so I'm going to make a few little modifications. And again, I can do this from up here at the top, or I can come on over here and do it in my properties panel. So I'm going to change the font, kind of like the font the way it is, but the font size, I'm going to bump this up to like a 26 here. That looks pretty good. I'm going to change it to a bold color. I'm probably then going to take this over, I'm going to center this for the alignment. And then anything else here, vertical alignment I like, but I am going to change the color of it. So instead of it being black, I'm going to go with maybe a white. See if I like that. I kind of like that, it looks pretty good. Now here's the reason why I just didn't put a text label on and I put it on top of a rectangle. Because if I just did a text label, it's always going to be centered across the whole thing. But now if I put this on top of a rectangle, I could modify that text. I could put it just over here, and now I have all of this space. So that's why I'm liking to use the rectangle, because I get more freedom and design control. So again, I'm just going to do another quick save. We've added a few things in. And so now I've got a label. I've got a rectangle. The next thing I want to do is, typically on my applications, is I like to have a footer. And usually on my footer, I'll do some kind of like a welcome message. So whoever is logged in, it says, hey, welcome Matt Peterson, or welcome Molly Browning, or whatever it might be. So that's what I'm going to do next. But because I already like the way that my header looks with the rectangle and the text, I don't want to just, redo all that work. Within Canvas apps, you can copy and paste your controls. So that's what I'm going to do next, is just copy and paste these out. So the way I'll do that, I'm going to do it incorrectly to start with, to show you a little bit of a snafu that might happen to you. I'm going to take this label. So I currently have the label selected. And with the label selected, I can do a Control-C and a Control-V. And now we can see here that I have the text label, and I'm just going to bring it down all the way to the bottom of my application screen. And then once I have that, I am going to relabel this. So I'm going to call this LBL footer. Now I'm going to do the same thing with the rectangle, but the other way to copy and paste is in the tree view. You can hit your ellipses next to it, and you can hit copy, and then I can do it again, and then just hit paste. So if you don't like using your shortcuts, you can do it over here on the tree view. And again, I'm going to relabel this. This is going to be my RCT footer. And some of you might be saying, Matt, I think you could have grouped those controls and moved them all at once. We can. I'll get into grouping a little bit later in our series. So now that I have my rectangle footer, I'm just going to drag this down. And notice, this was the issue I was talking about. I drag the rectangle on top, or I drag it down, and now it hides the text label. And that's all due to layering. So if you take a look at the left-hand tree view, the way that these objects show up, these are the different layers on the application. So right now, if we take a look, rectangle footer is the top layer of the application. Then it's LBL footer, then it's label header, then it's rectangle header. And so when one layer is on top of another, we can't see it. So what I need to do is I need to fix this. I need to take LBL footer and I need to move it forward a layer so it's on top of the rectangle. So if I come over here and I hit my ellipses, I can go to reorder, and then I can say bring forward. Now if I bring forward, it brings it forward one layer. If I do bring to front, it becomes the very top layer of the whole application. So I'm going to go with bring forward. Bring to front would have worked just as well. And now we can see JWJ student check in and out. Okay. Now what I'm going to do is modify this. All right. So I'm going to modify the text. So one way to do this, just very generically, is I could do the following. I'm going to come over to my text, and I'm just going to do a generic welcome. So welcome, comma, space, and then I can use a function called the user function. And what the user function does is it can bring back whoever's logged in, it can bring back their email address, their picture, or their name. So in this case, I want to bring back their name. So I'm going to use the user function to do that. Now you'll notice as I start to type this in, it's not going to work at first. So I do welcome, I write user, and I'm getting red underlines. Well, the reason is this is a text label and I'm trying to bring together two separate values. So in order to do that, we put in an ampersand, which will allow me to concatenate, or as I like to call it as a teacher, smush together. So now once I have that in, and now when I type in the user function, now my IntelliSense is lighting up, so things are good to go. And again, if I click on user, anytime you write a formula, right above it at the top is going to tell you what the formula needs. And the user function just needs an open and a close parentheses. So I put in the closed parentheses, but I'm getting another error again. Now, this is because the user function returns a record. Anytime you write formulas, it's going to tell you what's being returned. And we can't display a whole record on side of or on top of or in a label. So because it's bringing back a record, I now have to define what do I want from that record. So in order to do that, to always see those values associated with it, you put in a period. And so when I put in the period here, you can see now I can bring back their email, their full name, or their image. So that's anytime you got a record, you always put in a period to get those extra column values. Also, just note, if you're ever writing a new function or you're like, I don't know what to do next with this formula, and you're like, I'm just stuck, always put in a period and see if that helps guide you. Let's see if the Power Apps IntelliSense says, oh, now here's the next thing that you can do with this. So now that I have that in here, what I'm going to do is going to bring back their full name. So user full name. And as you can see, it now says, welcome Matt Peterson, which is good. So that's exactly what I wanted. However, to make this a little bit more dynamic, I want the greeting to be a little bit different based on what time they log into the application. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to take this out and I'm going to paste in some code, and I will put this into the comments section of the, not the comments, the description of the video, so you can just copy and paste this out. But here's what's happening, all right? So it looks like it's a lot here, but let me explain what's going on. Also, you have this format text. Whenever you write a formula, if you want to see the way that Power Apps thinks it's the easiest way to be represented, you can click format text, and now it formats it for you, which I really do like here. So here's what's occurring. I'm running an if statement. So the first thing it's going to do is it's going to do an if check. And the first check it's going to do is the now function returns the current date and time. And so then I use the hour function to pull the hour out of that time. So, right now it is 7:46 in the morning. So it's pulling out the number 7 from that timestamp. And then I'm checking to see if that number is less than 12. If that number is less than 12, that means this if has evaluated to true. And then it runs the following. It says, good morning, and then it says my name. Now, if that number is not less than 12, I'm doing another if check. So if this is false, then it does my false statement, which is do another if check. So I pull out from the now timestamp, I pull out the hour, and I see if that number is less than 17. So that means we would be checking any numbers 12, 13, 14, 15, 16. So that says, all right, if you're in that range, then you're in the afternoon. All right, you're before 5 o'clock and you're at 12 o'clock or after. So then if that is true, it runs good afternoon, user full name. And then finally, if that is not true either, then I have it just default to good evening. So if it's after 5 o'clock, then it'll say good evening. So again, that description, in the description is where I will put that link or that code there that you can just easily copy and paste out. And so now it says, good morning, Matt Peterson. The only thing I think I'm going to do with this is over for the alignment. I like to right align this. So I'm going to right align it. Like so. Oop, that left aligned it. Sorry, I'm going to right align it. And then I'm also going to change the padding of this as well. So I'm going to come on over here and I'm going to go to the padding end of the label so that there's always a little bit of wiggle room at the right so it doesn't just jut up right against it. And I'm going to change my padding in. Let's see what a 15 looks like. I kind of like that. So that's looking good. And I'm going to save. So a few more things I'm going to do in here, and then we're going to call it quits for our second episode of the series. The next thing I want to show you is how you can bring back in images. In these images, there's two different things I'm going to show. The first one that I want to show you is how you can bring back your own image. So I'm going to come up here to the insert ribbon. I'm going to search for image, and I'm going to bring in image. Now, right now, it's just a sample image. But if you wanted this, maybe you don't want a welcome message, you'd rather just show their picture on the application. The formula that does that is after you bring in an image, you change this to user. So we're going to use our user function again, dot image. And as you can see, there is my image right here. Now, some of the things to note about images, if you like the rounded images like we have when we're looking at our Office 365 account, one of the easiest ways to do that is with your image selected, I'll change my image position from a fit to a fill, so it fills up the whole rectangle. You can see when you do that, you are going to get some things chopped off of your picture. So now that wonderful bow tie no longer shows. And this is actually the school that I used to work at right here that I made this check-in app for. And then once I change that, if I come down to the border radius of the image and make it something more like 60, you'll see that we're starting to get those rounded areas to it. If I make this a little bit smaller now to mimic kind of Microsoft's way that they show it, now you can see that I'm getting that more circular nature. So if you like that, feel free just to put it up here in the upper right hand corner if you'd like to. I'll do the same, and I've got my image there. And then I'm just going to relabel that to IMG user. But what if you have some preset images that you want to bring into your application? Well, that can be done as well. So over in your left-hand navigation bar, you have the media section. And the media section allows you to upload images, video, or audio files. And your only limitations to this, as I scroll down, is each file can be no larger than 64 megs, and you're only allowed 200 megs of storage for everything that you bring in. So if you want to bring in an image, all we do is we click the upload button. So I'm going to click upload, and then I'm going to go into my downloads here. So let me find my downloads, and I'm going to bring in both of these. I have a Trojan head and my JWJ logo as well. So I'll bring those in, and as you can see, I now have those over here. So once I have them in the media section, if I want to use one of these images, all I have to do is take the image, drag it, and drop it. And now you can see I have images. And again, I know you don't have these images. You do not have to put images onto your application, but I wanted to show you how easy it is to do that. And then whenever you have these images, notice that you are going to have all these other options that you can do. For example, on select, we could say anytime somebody selects this Trojan head, what do we want our application to do? All right, so I'm not going to waste any more of your time getting it looking exactly picture perfect. I'll do that before the next video. So I'm just going to kind of bring them up here for now. So the last thing that I want to show you, and we'll call it quits, is let's see the data that we had created in episode 1. In episode 1, we created a student table that's going to have the list of all of our students and some demographic information about them, what grade they're in, all sorts, first name, last name, etc. And I want to put on this screen a list of all the students, because in the future, my teachers are going to be able to look at the student list, pick a student who has just showed up into their room, and then perform a check-in record on that student. So let's start to see some data in here. The way we're going to show the data is using a gallery. Galleries are great because they can display multiple records at a time. You can put filters on them. You get to decide what values about the record you want to see, and it's a great design. You can put in data tables, which are exactly probably what you're thinking. You're going to have column headers, and then you're going to have all the rows of data underneath. So it's just like looking at an Excel spreadsheet. Typically for apps though, I like for it to have a little bit more design to it and not be as bland. So we're going to use a gallery to do this one. So where we'll come over to put in a gallery, I'm going to go back to my tree view. Again, I'll deal with that Trojan head a little bit later. I'm going to go to the insert drop down, and then I'm going to choose a vertical gallery, which means my records will be displayed in a vertical fashion. There is also horizontal, so you see them across rather than up and down, but we're going to go with a vertical gallery. Now when I choose vertical gallery, it's going to say, okay, what do you want in your gallery? Well, right now I only have my room tables table in this design, so to speak. If I go to the data view, you can see that all I have right now is my room tables table. Room tables table. What I want to do is I want to get my student table into this application. So in the data section on the left hand side, I'm going to click add data, and then I'm going to find, and there it is, my students table. So I'm going to bring in, if you can't see students, you can just start typing it in. And this is the one we want, not the check-in and outs yet, that'll be later. So I'm going to bring in my students table, just like so. And now that I have my students table in here, I'm going to have my gallery selected. And then over on the right-hand side, in my properties panel, I can do data source and then choose my students table. And when I choose my students table, you can start to see that I've already got some information in here because this is data that we created in our first video. Now, I'm going to leave it like that. We're going to learn in our next episode how we take these galleries and how we can modify them and make them look exactly like we want to. So we covered a lot in this one. We talked about variables, controls, the tree view, some conditional logic. We've got the app started. Hopefully you enjoyed it, and stay tuned for the next episode where we're going to continue to build on this. And again, by the end of this series, we will have a fully functional application built in Microsoft Teams that is going to handle check-ins and check-outs of our students. So thank you for watching. If you liked, make sure to hit like and also subscribe to stay up to date on all of our content. I'll see you in the next one.